Thank you for joining for this episode of the TechSpective podcast. I have with me Itai Maor. Itai, if you want to kind of give an introduction, a little background on yourself.
Sure. Hi. Thanks for having me. My name is Itai Maor. I'm the Chief Security Strategist at Cato Networks and also a founding member of Cato Control. Control is the Cyber Threats Research Lab, so threat intelligence at Cato Networks. For those who are not familiar with Cato Networks, we're a SASE company. We're founded in 2015, and today we have over 3,500 customers. We do networking and security. That's SASE.
Okay. Well, let's get into with the Cato Control threat research and stuff. One of the things I want to talk about that I think is, it's an issue for organizations whether they know it's an issue or not, is shadow AI. And the thing is, most organizations were already doing a bad job dealing with shadow IT, and now we've got shadow AI. So I guess let's start with just kind of give me your sort of 10,000-foot view of the shadow AI problem.
Right. So you framed it correctly. I think it's shadow IT's ugly new cousin, brother, whatever the relationship is. And with shadow AI, it's those applications and tools that use AI that come or find their way into an organization without the IT or security department knowing about it. What it means is this lack of visibility means if the company doesn't know about it, they can't secure it, monitor it, patch it, see if any data leakage happens, anything that can be done with an application in general. And I think one of the challenging things with shadow AI is you have all the problems of shadow IT and then all the underlying problems that, or the risks, I should say, that come with AI. So organizations are today lacking the visibility to see the different tools that their own employees are bringing in and using.
Okay. Well, okay, but I guess the maybe not the flip side, but maybe an influencing factor is, I've seen there are organizations who are like, you cannot use AI. Stop using, don't use those tools. And I know of organizations that have them like blacklisted on the network. If you try to go to ChatGPT, it won't work. If you try to go to Perplexity, it won't work. And my take on that, my philosophy and guidance on that is a losing proposition, because for every tool you add to your blacklist, there are 15 other tools that you don't know about. And if I'm an employee, I can find a tool that you haven't blacklisted. So I think from the organization's standpoint, and this was true of shadow IT as well. Like when if you go back to like the early cloud days, and employees started saying, okay, well, I want to get this document from point A to point B. I'm just going to upload it to Google Docs or Dropbox or Box or whatever. And then organizations going, well, hold on. That's our proprietary data. We don't want you putting our data on Dropbox. Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, well, instead of being an organization that says from some draconian perspective, I'm banning you from doing that thing, IT managers needed to step back and say, okay, well, why are you doing that thing? What are you trying to accomplish that I have not given you the right tools to accomplish? And how do I empower you to do those things? That's, I think, where we're at with AI, is to say, okay, what are you trying to do with these AI tools that you can't do without the AI tools? And how do I, as IT, give you the ability to do those things without you going off and signing up for unsanctioned tools and sharing our data with LLMs that we don't know about?
I agree. I'd even double down on that. And I'd say one of the first things that when I talk to organizations, or I also teach at college, I teach my students is AI is not going to replace humans. Humans who use AI are going to replace humans who don't use AI. That applies to individuals, and that applies to businesses as well. So not only do I agree with you, one of the things that I say I end most of my presentations where I talk about AI threats, I say the biggest threat today to your organization with AI is not using it, because you'll fall behind those who do. You want to see examples from the past? Think about Netflix and Blockbuster and where each company is today with adopting technology, right? So I completely agree with you. And once you stop an employee from using a certain application or capability, everybody becomes a hacker. Everybody finds ways around your policy, whatever it is. And so I agree with you. Organizations need to understand how to help their own employees and use the tools, why they need them, and help them use them. Now, I think the view should not be yes or no. That's a very, that can be a strategic view that is correct for things like we don't allow the darknet, right? Tor, no Tor browsers. I can understand why an organization will completely ban that. But we need to go in deeper. And today there are capabilities where you can say, okay, so Tony wants to use ChatGPT, yes or no? Well, let's allow him. But let's go one level deeper. We can say, okay, we allow you, Tony, to use ChatGPT, but only corporate users or corporate tenants that we can monitor and see what is happening. Or you can go a level down. You can say, okay, Tony, you can use ChatGPT. You can use even your private user, but we're going to stop you if you try to upload a file, because that's not in our risk appetite. We don't want stuff leaving our network. You can go, of course, deeper. Hey, Tony, you can use ChatGPT. You can use your own user. You can even upload files, but not files containing 16-digit numbers, because those are credit card numbers, and that's not in our PCI DSS compliance or whatever it is. So yeah, we have the ability to go in deeper today with security tools and be able to say, here's where our risk appetite stands with each and every application. And of course, we need to understand why the employee wants it.
Okay. One of the things that this is somewhat tangential, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, because maybe I'm just wrong. And I'll start with a sort of anecdotal analogy. When Apple introduced Touch ID for the iPhone, within like a month of that coming out, there were security researchers who had come out with like reports of like, well, I can, it could be hacked. And then when you read it, though, they'd be like, well, see, if I do some sort of like, Mission Impossible MacGyver thing to like lift your fingerprint off of a glass from your office, and then I can like, create a 3D rendering of your thumbprint, then I can use that. And it's like all this like James Bond stuff. And my takeaway was sort of like, okay, well, you have simultaneously A, proven it is possible to hack Touch ID, but B, demonstrated to me that I do not need to be concerned, that nobody is going to hack my Touch ID because that is too much effort. In a similar vein, that's how I have viewed the arguments about data being shared with LLMs. Where when they say, well, we don't want you, uploading like our financial reports to OpenAI because now it's part of the LLM, and you've exposed our data. It's like, well, exposed to who? Who is going to go find that data? Like, yes, technically speaking, whatever data I shared is now part of the LLM. It's part of the overall data set. Mm-hmm. But I feel like the actual risk of someone being able to drill into that OpenAI LLM data set, find the data that I shared, and connect the dots back to my company seems minuscule. So,
look, it in terms of what can or cannot be done in terms of the data being accessed later, there's the first layer of things that you mentioned is there's no doubt that once you do share the data, it goes somewhere that you don't control it. Now, we've already seen examples where you could obtain this information directly from these from different tools, different jailbreaks, different prompt injections, and getting getting and finding the data. I think at the end of the day, it's up to every company's own risk appetite to think, hey, where are the benefits, where are the risks, and how likely. This is the classic, risk matrix. What is the likelihood of something happening versus what is the impact of it happening, of what happens if this event does happen. And yeah, I think organizations need to take this type of risk assessment and decide, hey, do I feel comfortable with it or not? And I think most organizations today don't feel comfortable with sharing, especially proprietary data or parts of the code, because there's also a question of like, what do you upload, and do you even know everything that you're uploading? In some cases, we've seen people upload code to these LLMs to check them for errors, which, by the way, they do an amazing job. I tried to play around in some amazing results, but unknowingly they uploaded hard-coded username and passwords. And at least in the early days, we saw that it is possible to extract some of this information out of these LLMs. And you never know who is jailbreaking them and what's happening in the background. And we've seen criminals take these models and find ways to lower the gates and then get in. What is the likelihood, as you said, with the thumbprint? Might be lower, but organizations that have proprietary information, I don't think would even take that type of risk. I agree with you when it comes to your phone. Yeah, generating that 3D thumbprint, is the cost of creating it is probably higher than very simple attacks that would work.
Well, yeah, and I guess I would say too that there comes a point where, like, well, if I'm using AI for the attack, then maybe it's more plausible. Because like I don't think any person is going to go into the LLM and try to find this data and connect the dots. But if I've got a tool and I can automate that, and I could say, hey, I want you to just go search this LLM, find me the good stuff, go find the treasure. That seems more plausible.
And we have to keep in mind, we're still at the very early days of AI being introduced. And every week we're introduced to new capabilities and then potentially new vulnerabilities or entryways for threat actors or hackers. And so I think there is some caution around what it is that we do and how do we do it. And of course, sharing of sensitive data that might lead to some data leakage is just one of many different attack vectors that come along with using an LLM.
Yeah. Well, okay. So from a cybersecurity perspective, we've been talking for not a long time, but for the last year and a half at least, about generative AI, and now the attackers are using generative AI. And I think the initial focus was just on better phishing attacks. That especially if English isn't my first language, it's that much easier for me to craft a well-written phishing attack using something like ChatGPT. But there are other things too. Like basically, I mean, the AI is good at things that are routines and follow a structure. And it's like there are sort of defined steps for even for a human attacker, to say, okay, well, I need to do some reconnaissance. I need to find the weakness to get in the first place. I need to get a foothold. I need to figure out how to expand laterally. And a lot of those steps, even for a human, are formulaic. I mean, it's a checklist. You say, okay, I'm gonna do this. Once I'm in, I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna try to spread over here. And these are the things I'm gonna look for. And it's real easy to plug all that into a do it programmatically through AI and just say, okay, I just want you do it. Let me know when we've succeeded. And I think that then as an industry, cybersecurity said, okay, well, so we're going to use AI on the defensive side. You're going to use AI to attack. We're going to use AI to defend. Then we have a third tier of, okay, well, we also need new tools that are designed to defend the AI. Mm-hmm. And we've already very quickly gotten to a point where it's like, well, it's not really optional because of scale, just volume and scale. Like if the attackers are using AI, there's no way for a human to keep up. And we were there before generative AI, before ChatGPT came along. We already, from the cybersecurity perspective, we're talking about AI and ML and the sheer volume of attacks, and like you have to use machine learning to sift through things to help you narrow down the noise. So now it's this kind of like spiral of, okay, well, the attackers are using AI, so the defenders need to use AI, but we also need to use AI to defend the tools the defenders are using. And and I don't know, I feel like it quickly gets out of hand of like all the then we're going to need an AI to protect that AI, to protect that AI, to protect that AI.
But it's actually it's just a new evolution of things that we've already seen, right? Attackers use AI and defenders use AI, but we also need to defend the AI, just like we used all kinds of tools, and attackers would attack our own security tools. And yeah, I agree that we have to protect the AI systems from attacks from the threat actors. By the way, we've already seen multiple types of attacks and ways to kind of evade detection of AI tools. I think one of the most famous cases today is when the attackers are putting malware code injections in malware code. So when it gets analyzed by a sandbox that's using AI, it'll fall for those injections and say, oh, this file is safe, let it through. And that's how they're actually using, the cliche of the cyber jiu-jitsu. They're using the AI powers against it. Oh, you're using AI? I'll use that to get in. But it's something that we've kind of like had. We had SQL injection in the past, right? We did have vulnerabilities in security tools where attackers went after them. The number of VPNs and password wallets that have been cracked. So it's not really new, but it is definitely a necessity now because. Like I said, not using AI will make you stay behind. And by the way, I think another interesting aspect here is the fact that at least I haven't seen anything that coming from AI that is completely new. It's just like you said, they're using it to write phishing emails or parts of code or do all kinds of things, but there's no autonomous AI attack that we have never seen in the past. So far, we're dealing with newer or better or faster versions of things that we've already seen. And yeah, at the same time, we need to protect our own systems and make sure that prompts, they don't fall for jailbreaking and prompt injections and, feedback poisoning, training data poisoning, all kinds of other issues.
Well, that seems to basically illustrate one of the obvious weaknesses of AI as it stands today, that I think some people don't fully understand. But like when you say, well, we're not seeing it do something new, and it's like, well, it can't. Like literally, it's basing what it does on probabilities calculated from the data it was trained on, and so it's like, if I ask it to write something, it can't really come up with something new. All it can do is come up with the closest probability to what I'm asking for based on what it already knows from the past. Mm-hmm. It's not actually capable of unique, original creativity.
Well, I think there are two sides here. I was asked in a forum almost 2 years now. I think that somebody asked me. I'm going to move from cybersecurity for a second. Asked me actually about art, and they asked me, "Hey, do you think that these AI tools will replace artists in the future?" And I thought about it for a second, and I said, the ability to create doesn't make you creative. Just because you can create something doesn't mean you're going to create something completely new or that we haven't seen before. On the other hand, if we're talking about art, there's a couple of AI generated bands that are now leading in Spotify, and you have all these different AI music. So I think it's yet to be seen. We need to keep a very close eye on what these different tools and how they're being used. Also, keep in mind that AI is it's a very unique situation. Historically speaking, threat actors have been early adapters of new technology. If you're thinking about dark web, cryptocurrency, they've always been the early adapters. Not so much with AI. The first company I ever worked for in the year 2000 did neural network based anomaly detection. So we used AI 25 years ago, and there are companies before us as well. The main difference, right, is now it's accessible, because when we used AI, the security industry, you need a lot of compute power, you need a lot of knowledge, you need a lot of scientists to do that. And as soon as it became a chatbot, all of a sudden it became a lot more accessible. So what I'm trying to say here is, I think we're still in the very early days, although it's been 2 years, but we're still in the very early days of the threat actors adapting and adopting to this technology. We're also seeing them try to recruit in the criminal underground data scientists and machine learning experts in order to, make their own jailbroken models. Not make them, actually just jailbreak them and have them do stuff that they're not supposed to.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about this. The art perspective. I think that's a good point. Because on the one hand, I do think it's a problem that LLMs have just kind of stolen like all the copyrighted material in the world and trained on it. That said, I think it's also a fair and valid argument. Like, whether I'm talking about, like, let's say I wanted to write I have aspirations that one day I might write a novel. If I was going to write a novel, I would likely pattern my writing after Dan Brown or Andy Weir, because I've read their stuff and I like their stuff, and that's kind of what inspires me to want to write a novel in the first place. And so, like, am I stealing their stuff? It's like, the bottom line, everything that humans do, whether it's writing, whether it's music, whether it's painting, sculpting, is on some level derivative. Like, you can't unknow the things that you've seen and heard and stuff. So you've heard music before. So if you sit down to write a song, on even subconscious level, like, you're being influenced by the music you've heard before. And so, like, well, is AI any different? It almost comes down to scale. It's just, the AI is just able to do it on a much bigger, faster scale. Like, I can pattern my writing after Dan Brown, whereas the AI can pattern it after every book ever written.
Mm-hmm. But I think, again, if we're talking about art, you do have with humans those one-offs that then define, right? Picasso, nobody drew like Picasso before him, and he kind of, or you think about it like Andy Warhol, or, if you go back like to philosophers, you always had those who did something very different, and then a lot followed suit and kind of like branched off it.
True, but it was still, like, to some extent, it was still on the shoulders of what came before them. It was Picasso looking at art and going, okay, I know all of this art. Here's what I want to do. And that I do think is the part that I think AI today isn't really capable of. Like, I think I can go into an AI tool and I can say, make me an image that's like something Picasso would do. Make me an image that's like something Salvador Dali would do. And it was very good at that. But I don't know that any AI tool in existence today would understand if I said, make me art that is original and unique and unlike any of the art that you know about.
Right. We're not there yet, but again, like I said, we're still in the very early days, and I think we'll start seeing new things coming out. There's discussions around general AI and, where those things might take us. So remains to be seen. It's really hard to do some of these predictions. I was talking to a reporter about 6 months ago. We were talking about different types of actually attacks and vulnerabilities in AI. And she asked me, hey, Ty, can you predict what the attacks will look like in 2 years? I told her, to be honest, with everything that's going out now, like, I can't predict what it's going to be like in 6 months.
Right.
I mean, and the creativeness part is really interesting when it comes to the kind of like hand holding between AI and humans. I teach, for example, non-technical students, so not computer science students in the university. But when I introduce platforms to them that for vibe coding, all of a sudden they're like, "Oh my God, I can program! I'm a programmer now, right? I'm a wizard, Harry. You're a wizard, Harry." And they go and they start creating the software, and you start seeing them like think out of the box and start using these tools to create things that they personally would have never done in the past. By the way, on a side note related to what just we said before, you then look at the code and you realize, wow, this code is pretty naive. I know how I would attack it as a threat actor. The code that the AI wrote doesn't think about potential attacks from certain vectors. So I think it's still, we're still in the early days, and we'll see where these things are going. It's definitely going to be interesting. But again, the capabilities and the tools that are coming out almost on a weekly basis now, that you have this new, whether it's video, audio, coding, agentic AI that we're seeing more and more of. The rate of change and the new capabilities is nothing like we've seen before.
Okay. What do how do we, there's lots to talk about various regulations. And I recently talked with Alex Boris, who's a assemblyman in New York, who introduced the RAISE Act in New York. There's different state level regulations that are designed to try to, rein in AI on some level. You also have things like, is it Denmark or the Netherlands that passed a law basically giving you ownership of your likeness, so that, to try to like prohibit someone from using your likeness. And my perspective is, I'm not saying we shouldn't have laws and regulations, but my issue is that laws and regulations only work for law-abiding people and organizations. And so, like, I can make a regulation that says, hey, you can't use, Itai's face, in your AI generated video. And it's like, okay, well, I'm a law-abiding citizen, so I won't do that. That's not going to stop someone else from doing it.
That's again something that we have seen before. It's nothing new. It's been like that in the past as well. I'll give you one example. GDPR, right? And the laws to protect privacy. Very simple example. In the past, when we wanted to take down a phishing website or collect information about whoever is running a phishing website, we can approach the hosting facility and require that information. Now, GDPR actually protects those threat actors under the same laws that were meant for good. What's the saying? No good deed goes unpunished. We can obtain that information because it's protected by a law. And you're right. And we always had these issues where the threat actors never had the regulations that we had to work with, both on the law side, but also on the production side of things. When I want to release a new feature to a product, I have to go through endless cycle of QA and making sure everything works properly. And they release they reverse engineer what I deploy, and they release something within hours, days. So we've always had this. Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, like, that's actually been an argument. A similar argument has been used, by the Sam Altmans and Mark Zuckerbergers of the world to say, hey, we need you to stop trying to regulate what we do because no one's regulating China. So while we're arguing about semantics about like, well, what is allowed and what China's just doing whatever they want, and so we're going to lose the AI race because we're hamstringing ourselves with regulations. And I'm like, okay, I understand the point you're trying to make. And I agree. Like, yes, if one nation has no rules and they're just doing whatever they want, and we're telling you, hey, maybe don't do evil things, that impedes your ability to just do whatever you want. But I don't think that the answer in that case isn't, well, yes, we should all just throw out all the rules and everyone should do bad things. Like, that's not the solution for that.
Yeah, no. I wasn't hinting towards that. Of course, you need regulations, and you without getting into politics, you might want to, as you suggested, you might not want to live in a society or a location where everything is allowed, because you don't know how that may come back to haunt you as well. So yeah, you definitely need regulations. I think there's also different levels. I'm sure that in some of these organizations and companies, they're working on certain things, and they're finding out, hey, this tool can produce this AI tool can produce this product. Maybe with this shouldn't be publicly available. You think about all the types of, video and revenge videos and all kinds of bad things that people can do with that, and say, okay, maybe with that part we shouldn't allow, but some video editing capabilities using AI should be out there. And so there we need the regulations. I hope, and I'm pretty sure that these companies also have internal checks and balances to say, this should be public, this should be maybe government, and this should not go out at all.
Well, there's a model historically for that as well, with like satellite imagery. Like once we had satellites that could do imagery of the ground, like mostly those were military controlled satellites, and that was not available to the private sector. And then eventually it was available to the private sector. You could just say, hey, you know what? I would like a satellite image of my house. And I can go online and I can pay someone to give me a satellite image of my house. But what's available to me as a consumer is not the same level as what is available to the U.S. military. So I might get a, say, 100x photo of my house, but the military can literally read the text on my iPhone from space. So it's a matter of degree, and with AI it might be something similar, where we say, okay, well, the government agencies can do blah blah blah. I don't know, like I feel like right now today, and I don't want to veer off into politics, but right now today I'm like, I don't actually want the government to have more power than me, honestly.
And look, you're talking about a situation that's been going on for years, actually throughout humanity. Things become more accessible and available to the common person that was once something that you could never get your hands on. I'll give you another example of these things. Drones, right? Who would think 10, 15 years ago that drones would have been so accessible? And by the way, look at what's happening now in certain wars. Think about Russia, Ukraine, and how these tools are then weaponized in mass numbers to do all kinds of things, something that we've never thought about before. So there's really gray areas around that. And but going back to your original point about this is, we need regulations, but everything is very fluid based on all the different developments and things that are coming out.
Yeah, well, and I think the regulations need to be smart or whatever. Yeah, I don't have a specific example, but I've been writing about technology and cybersecurity long enough to see, and like I don't know, I use like ransomware or something, like what something starts to become a problem, and it's almost like when you're a hammer, everything's a nail kind of an analogy. Like when there's a problem, if you are an elected legislator, everything can be legislated, and that's the only, and that's all you know how to do. so our elected officials are like, oh well, yes, ransomware is a problem, we should make a law. And it's like, okay, well, it's already breaking laws. Like we have laws already. I don't need a specific law that says ransomware is bad, because all the other things they did to make the ransomware were already illegal, and everything about it was already illegal. I don't need another law. But that's all they know how to do, really, is they're like, well, we see a bad thing, we're going to make a law.
Okay, I don't want to get foxed, but I'll give you a counterpoint to that just because I'm enjoying the conversation. But then you see a law like the OFAC law around not being allowed to pay ransomware for those ransomware groups that are known to be nation-state actors, and so you don't support terrorism. So okay, I can see why that makes sense. And yeah, you are putting maybe some of the victims into kind of like in between two bad choices. Okay, I'm not allowed to pay it, but on the other hand, all my production is down. What do I do now? So what do you want me to do? It's tough situations, but I feel, or at least I hope that with the regulations that we have or that are being written even right now, that they are there to aid us to make sure that, people, the common people and companies don't abuse this technology for bad things, and, trying to keep things civil as much as possible, not just to legislate for legislation's sake.
Yeah. No, and that's a very good point. I mean, I worked a few years back. I worked at Cybereason, and we focused a lot on ransomware, and a lot of what I wrote at the time working with them, revolved around it's just a bad idea. Don't pay the ransom. And that was the FBI guidance. Don't ever pay the ransom. But we always had to kind of throw the caveat in there of, well, you shouldn't pay the ransom, but that's a subjective decision, because it's like, well, is not paying the ransom going to mean that your company is going to go out of business and 500 people are going to lose their jobs? Maybe you should pay the ransom. Is not paying the ransom mean that, you're a hospital system and people are going to die? Maybe you pay the ransom. And yes, possibly that ransom is tied back to shady organizations with terrorist. There's a huge gray area there of trying to figure out, okay, well, what are you supposed to do? How do you navigate that? So that is definitely a problem. And the thing that you talked about with GDPR, I mean, there are unintended consequences of laws often, and not just related to technology and cybersecurity. It's just kind of the nature of language. You write the law, and the way it's written, it's like, okay, well, now that it's written and it's been codified into the legal system, now it's open to interpretation.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, to your point about ransomware, I just came back yesterday or the day before. It's already wait for me with time, from the UK, from an event where a government official was speaking and saying that they now had their first confirmed official death due to ransomware of a hospital. And yeah, you get into the situations of like, so have we paid or not? Not easy decisions. I completely agree.
Yeah. Going back to, I want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned a couple of times that you also teach. I'm curious, how you, how the institution you teach at, their perspective on the use of AI by students, and your personal perspective on the use of AI by students.
Oh, you're getting into an interesting area now. So I teach at Boston College in Boston. And first, I'll start with my perspective about AI. I started talking about AI to my students about 6 or 7 years ago, and I talked about this thing that I found called GPT-2, and they had no idea what I was talking about. And if I'm being completely honest, I didn't understand the scale of what I was looking at the time as well. That moved to be like a couple of slides when I talked about disinformation and misinformation campaigns, mostly around deep fakes and usage of voice synthesis. Today, AI is about a third of my course is dedicated to AI, with the different elements that we just talked about: how defenders can use AI, how attackers can use AI, how AI can be attacked, shadow AI, and agentic AI are the 5 different topics. My view is the same view that I started this conversation with. If you can use AI, you're going to replace those who don't use AI. So, hey, students, if the situation right now is out there tough when you're going to get a job, if you can demonstrate to your potential employer that you know how to use AI tools, you're going to have a much bigger edge than people who were trying to shy away from this. Oh, AI, that's not me. I don't use that. So I'm a huge proponent of it. Not only that, I teach it early in the course, and I tell my students, and I actually did that also with ChatGPT when it came out. And that's when we get to the Institute's approach to it, which was like, using AI is cheating. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm having flashbacks to when I was a kid. I remember my teacher telling me using the internet was cheating. Are you going to stop the evolution? Really? No. You have to use AI. And I tell my students, if you can use AI to cheat, if I tell you to write a rubber ducky code and you don't know how to write it, and you ask AI to do it, I'm completely fine with that. If I give you a task to decrypt something, and something is hard and you're using AI, I'm completely fine with it. I'm sorry, I'm very passionate about this, but I'm I'm really annoyed by how, for example, high schools are now, because I have kids at high school, are attacking this point of like, yeah, we can detect if our students use AI by doing this and that and all kinds of ideas. And I'm like, no, enable them, let them do more. Now, I understand that there's a
Yeah.
balance here of they need to understand how to do certain things and not just rely on AI and have them, you're not training them enough and they're completely reliant. But my approach is using it.
Well, okay. So let me, on the one hand, so yes, the basics have to be taught. Like you should know that 2 + 2 is 4. You should know the answer to that question, to that problem, without a calculator, without ChatGPT. There are some basic things you need to know without other tools. That said, even before generative AI and these things, I was always a proponent, especially in like the high school and college level, of open book, because I'm like, that's the real world. When I'm working in my job, no one is demanding that I have everything memorized. Like I'm allowed to look up things in sources, and so like to me, that is a successful. Like if I ask you a question, I don't want to police how you get to the answer. I just want you to get the right answer. And so if that is looking in a book, then look in a book. If it's asking ChatGPT, then ask ChatGPT. What you've demonstrated to me is that when posed with this question, you know how to get the answer. And that's the part that matters. Now, I think for me, and I'm not a teacher, I think it just means that how we teach and what we expect has to change, which we already went through with the internet and Google.
Exactly.
Like you just raise the level of like what you expect in return for like when you assign something. You say, okay, well, if I knew you were going to write the whole thing yourself or whatever, I might expect this. But since I know you're going to put it into ChatGPT, I'm going to expect something way better because I need you to do something here too. I need you to contribute to this equation and not just give me something that ChatGPT spewed. I don't know if you know Sam Curry. He's CISO at Zscaler now.
Very close friend of mine from RSA days. We both worked at RSA. Love Sam.
Okay. Well, I worked with Sam at Cybereason, and he and I are friends. And when I had him on this podcast and we talked about this, he's also a teacher. He also teaches in his spare time, and he had a very unique, where he said that he tells his students to use AI. He just requires them to also provide the queries. So like as part of like, he just wants to know, well, how did you get here? So like don't just give me the output from ChatGPT. I want to know, what did you ask ChatGPT? And I was like, that seems fair, to just be transparent about it. Like, yes, I used generative AI. Here's the query I gave it. This is the output that I got. Because I think to your point, it's like you have to use it. Like, and I think we need to be teaching people that they have to use it. I also have said for a year and a half now that it's not generative AI that's going to, AI is not going to steal your job. Someone who knows how to use AI is going to steal your job. So yeah. I think colleges have an obligation to teach students how to effectively use AI.
Completely, and I think one of the added benefits that's what I actually dive to in my course is, when you understand AI, you also understand where it sometimes fails or hallucinates or how it can be targeted. So the more hands-on you have with it, you're also realizing what are some of the risks or problems that come with it. And you don't want to run into it later. You want to have as much hands-on experience with that as you can. And the students do find out that, hey, if you ask certain things, you may get wrong answers, or how do I prompt engineer, right? The prompt to do what I wanted to do. But that's an important skill today, just like working with these vibe coding tools or whatever those tools are. So, I completely agree with it. I think everybody should be aware of what it's also capable of doing.
Well, and the other thing is, and I mentioned this earlier, but like ultimately it's probabilistic. It's just using math on the back end, against the data that it's trained on, and we expect perfection from it. Like I think so people are quick to point out when ChatGPT is wrong, or and I mean, and I did a whole post like a year ago. And it was a big thing. Like I didn't discover it in the first way; someone else did. But then I went and verified that it was in fact true. And I made a whole video of how if you went into ChatGPT and asked it how many letter R's are there in the word strawberry, it got it wrong. And it would have a whole you could debate ChatGPT about this and have a back and forth where you say, okay, well, really, and eventually it would get there. Like if you'd have enough back and forth that it would say, oh, okay. But it's like, well, how can you get that wrong? Like how hard is that to just know that there's three R's here? But I think part of the problem that people have is in expecting perfection from something that is only designed to be probably right. It's not designed to be absolutely right.
It's not deterministic. It's probabilistic. Yep. And yeah, those problems that you said they still happen, but that's why it's so important to get the hands-on and understand that it's not a perfect machine. And so you have to realize that the only way for me to do it is by playing around with the tools and by engaging and trying to do things and realizing, where and finding out where's your kind of like balance with these types of tools, because you're going to move from R's and strawberries to, hey, summarize this huge report for me and tell me what are the minor attack numbers that are in there, or what are the IOCs. Hey, it may get something wrong. So we need to pay attention, and we need to.
Well, and so some of that was already in existence as well. Like so, like when we say, okay, well, actually, let me step back. The idea of you have to double check it, like you need to make sure that it's right, so ChatGPT gives you an answer, you can't just accept the answer, you've got to like look into it. Now on the one hand I'd be like, well, doesn't that defeat the point? Like the point was to streamline this and make it easier for me, so like now you're asking me to do more work. And my answer to that is like, okay, but that was already true with Google. I mean, just because you Google something and you get a set of results, like who's to say that those results are the right thing? So like I think when I look at the sort of like the whole historical arc of the internet, it's like initially it was like, oh, this is great. I have access to all the information in the world at the push of a button. I can get any information. It's like, yes, the problem is I can also get all of the misinformation and disinformation in the same push of a button. And so now, instead of making my life easier, it actually added work, because now I've got to do extra work to validate the results.
Yeah, so that's where you start thinking about, okay, so if I have a certain question, where do I hand it off to the human versus the AI? You can think about, depending on how much information needs to be ingested and how fast you need an answer, or how critical will be the answer to a certain situation. Like if it sets a firewall rule, maybe I want to take a look at it before you actually put it into production, versus something that may be a little bit less impactful on the organization. But yeah, I agree. It's consuming information. And by the way, we didn't even start talking about, you now have AI generated data, which is going to be consumed by AI. So. Oh
yeah, I mean, I definitely have talked about that though, which is I just posted about it last week in relation to this ridiculous debate about M-dashes. Because everyone is like, well, the M- is a telltale sign that it's AI generated. And I'm like, do you know why it's a telltale sign that it's AI generated? It's because they trained on all of my books. And they trained on everything else I wrote and everything else every other writer wrote. And writers use M-dashes. And so yes, the AI is going to use M-dashes. And I said, but the irony is, now that there's this backlash against the M- because people who don't write think it's an obvious sign that it's AI generated content. So they were like, well, okay, we need to remove all of the M-dashes to prove that this is not AI generated content. And I'm like, okay, well, that's ironic, because literally if you ask me to do that, I'm going to use generative AI to remove the M dashes. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, literally, I will take my document, I will upload it to ChatGPT, and I will say, remove the M dashes from this document, and that is how I will get the result. But also the next step is what you just said, which is 2 years from now, everyone's going to say the lack of M dashes is a telltale sign that your content is AI generated, because that's all it's going to be able to train on.
Yeah. Yeah, this is getting meta and meta by the moment. But
no, I mean, it's true. But going back to the probabilistic part, I was going to say, like, it's one of the things that I've talked about a lot recently, because every conversation now is about agentic AI. And we say, okay, so now companies are going to start deploying, AI agents. And, first of all, I'm like, okay, well, let's understand that, like, if I'm deploying AI agents, it's not like, at least it shouldn't be, in my opinion. An AI agent that has like God powers or whatever, like, I would deploy specific AI agents. And the analogy I use is like, it's like if I was going to take my job and assign tasks. If I could hire a team, if I had the resources to hire a team, I might hire one person. Okay, well, your job is to research information, and someone else was like, okay, well, your job is to copy edit. Your job is to take what I've written and make sure it's grammatically correct. Well, agentic AI is kind of the same. It's like you want to have specific agents. Like, your job is to do this. Your job is to do this. And just like if I hired humans to do those jobs, I'm going to have to check their work. I can't just have agentic AI and deploy it and assume everything just automatically will be right and it will just work. Now, hopefully it will be as, right as often or more so than a human equivalent, but it's unreasonable to expect it to be perfect.
I agree. My concern with agentic AI, especially when it's going to hit consumers, is that we're going to become dependent on it, just like we've become dependent on technologies that help us, and we can't live without them, right? Because as soon as a consumer will have an AI agent, whether it's like ones like you said that do specific jobs, or an orchestrator that will run multiple AI agents, the plan and execute kind of approach. My main concern is the excessive agency that is associated with that, where individuals will give these agents way too much access and way too much authorization to do things, because I want to be able to pick up my phone and say, hey, AI agent, I need a trip to the Bahamas, and it will, do the flights and the hotels and the car and the restaurants for me, and everything is done. Yeah, but to do that, it has access to my wallet and to my contacts. And
I've made the point a few times on it, where I'm like, listen, maybe we'll get there someday, but I don't trust any AI agent that much. I'm not giving it access to all that stuff. It sounds nice in theory. It's like if you had an actual human executive personal assistant that literally had, that's kind of the way executive assistants work. I mean, they've got access to the executive's email accounts, their calendar, they schedule the flights, they, book the appointments, they do all those things. It's like, so that's kind of what we're saying agentic AI might be someday, but I'm like, but the level of control you're wanting me to give it is problematic today. And my other issue, and I mean, I know we're pretty much at time, but like, yeah. My other issue that I think is a problem is we tell people you should double check it. So like if I ask ChatGPT to write something, I can read it and I can say, okay, well, no, this is wrong. Let's move this over here. And the reason I can do that is because I've been writing for 30 years, and I know what I'm doing. And if someone is a coder, someone's a developer, and they can use the tool because they can look at the code and see where it's wrong, and they can improve it. All of these things, like if I fast forward 5 years, if we have a generation of people who just use the AI tools, how are they supposed to fact check it? How are you supposed to double check it if you don't have the experience to know if it's wrong?
I see your point, and I agree with it, but at the same time, after being in San Francisco a couple of months ago, I never thought in my lifetime that I would see a human get into a car without a driver, let it drive it around.
I love Waymo.
There you go. And you're trusting it with your life. You're trusting it. You also are giving it your wallet and maybe knowledge of where you're going and where you're going to. And so I didn't think that would be possible. Humans have a tendency to, it's easy, so let's do it.
Well, the thing is with Waymo, I'd be like, well, it's not just that I think that it's easy. It's that I trust it more. Like so the options are, if I want to get from point A to point B, I mean, I can take public transit, but if we're just narrowing it down to I'm gonna rent a car, I can get a Waymo, I can get an Uber, I can get a yellow cab, whatever. But if I have a human driver, like that's a lot scarier to me. Like the humans are.
Would you get into a plane now that's AI flown? But we'll get there. I'm pretty sure we'll get there.
I mean, like today. I mean, I wouldn't not, but I would want like to me there does need to be the like beta pilot phase, like like show me some that make it from point A to point B without any humans in them, and then we can talk. I mean, I live outside of Houston. They already have 18-wheeler tractor trailers that are driverless going between Houston and Dallas. Now, when that news first came out, they actually, and I don't know where it stands now. Maybe they backed off again, but there was a backlash, and they did make them put humans in there. The humans aren't driving, but they're like
supervise.
But they're like, no, you need a human in the cab. But it's like, honestly, like when it comes to Waymo, it's like even if I'm driving a car. I mean, sometimes I'll go to San Francisco and I rent a car. If I'm driving a car through the streets of San Francisco, I would rather be driving next to a Waymo because I have confidence that they're not going to do something completely unpredictable. Like they do what they're supposed to do. They follow the rules of the road, and humans aren't very good at that.
To kind of like a surreal situation that I had in San Francisco, I saw a runner running on the street. I was right next to him. He was gonna cross a crosswalk, and a Waymo car came and identified that he's going to cross and stopped. And the runner went, "Thank you." And I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is so surreal. He just thanked nobody in the car for stopping. Like, the future is interesting.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, it was a fun conversation. I want to thank you for taking the time to join me.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it as well.